How is an acquittal reached in a trial? Imagine sitting in a courtroom, listening to all the evidence, and wondering how the judge or jury decides if someone is not guilty. It all comes down to one key idea: proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This means the evidence must be so convincing that there is no reasonable question in your mind that the person committed the crime. If there is even a small doubt that makes sense based on the evidence, the decision should be not guilty. In a jury trial, the jurors hear all the evidence and listen to legal arguments from both sides. They then go into a private room to discuss and decide if the evidence proves guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. If they are not convinced, they return a verdict of not guilty, which is an acquittal. This shows they believe the evidence does not meet the high standard needed to convict. In a bench trial, where only a judge decides, the judge reviews all the evidence and legal rules alone. If the judge finds that the prosecution has not proved every part of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt, they will declare the defendant not guilty. This is called a judgment of acquittal or a directed verdict. It can happen at different points during the trial, usually after the prosecution finishes presenting its case. Sometimes, during the trial, the defense can ask the judge for a judgment of acquittal. They do this by filing a motion asking the judge to dismiss the case because the evidence is not enough to support a conviction. The judge then carefully looks at all the evidence, considering it in the light most favorable to the prosecution. If the judge decides that no reasonable jury could find guilt beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence, they will grant the motion and acquit the defendant. This stops the trial early and protects the defendant's right to be presumed innocent. If the judge or jury does not grant an acquittal, the trial continues. The defense can then present its side, and the jury will decide the verdict based on all the evidence. If the jury finds the defendant guilty, the defense can ask the judge to overturn that verdict by filing another motion for judgment of acquittal. The judge then reviews whether the evidence legally supports the guilty verdict. If not, the judge can overturn it and declare the defendant not guilty. The main idea behind an acquittal is that the prosecution must prove every element of the crime beyond a reasonable doubt. This high standard means that doubts based on the evidence, not guesses or assumptions, prevent a conviction. It ensures fairness and keeps innocent people from being wrongly convicted when the evidence is weak or unclear. In court, an acquittal acts as a safeguard for the defendant's presumption of innocence. It also acts as a check on the prosecution's case, making sure they have enough solid proof before someone is declared guilty. So, an acquittal is reached when either the judge or the jury concludes that the evidence does not meet the very high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, leading to a legal finding of not guilty.